Three sinister nighttime hitchhikers, revealing terrifying encounters with the haunted and cursed. It was a stormy night on Highway 66, a road where darkness wasn't just absence of light, but an entity all its own. Locals whispered about three vengeful spirits that haunted that stretch, restless souls seeking revenge on the unwary. The rain hammered like a million tiny fists, and the wind shrieked through the trees, twisting branches into claw-like gestures. Many who dared to drive that road said they felt the cold embrace of death lurking in the shadows. Sarah, a single mother, had never believed the stories. But tonight, as her old sedan choked on the pavement and sputtered to a stop, uncertainty gripped her heart. She had just lost her job, the eviction notice still burned in her pocket, and her 8-year-old daughter Lily was waiting at home, vulnerable and alone. Panic echoed in her mind, and the shadows seemed impossibly deeper. As she sat, tears nearly mixing with the rain, she spotted a figure at the roadside. A hitchhiker, shrouded in darkness, appeared from the haze of torrential rain. Reluctant yet desperate, Sarah pulled over. Tom, he said his name was. He slipped into the front seat, and their eyes met briefly. His smile was too wide, too eager. "Dark road, huh?" he chuckled, as if the storm was merely a joke. "You know the ghost stories, right? Highway 66 is a curse." Against her better judgment, she nodded. As they drove in silence, the atmosphere thickened. Thunder rumbled overhead, shaking her resolve. Tom leaned in, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Three spirits haunt this road, and tonight they're awake." Chilled, she could hardly breathe. Every word he spoke painted images of despair and horror intertwined with her own life. Desperate tales spun around them, tales of betrayal and anger that echoed through Cedar Hollow, stories that felt closely linked to Sarah's own struggles. "Each driver they meet has a story," Tom said, eyes flickering with unnatural energy. "You've taken something from this town, haven't you?" His question hung in the air like a noose. Fear twisted in Sarah's gut. Could he know? Just then, the rearview mirror caught her eye. A ghostly hand appeared in the rain, beckoning with an eerie familiarity, as if it had lunged from the very core of Cedar Hollow itself. The hairs on her neck prickled, and she accelerated. Her heart thundered in her chest, drowning out the whispered warnings. "Keep moving," Tom insisted, enthusiasm blending with something darker. She strained to focus on the road ahead, but felt an unseen force pulling her towards the past. She thought of Lily, alone, unwittingly caught in the storm of whatever darkness haunted her mother's journey that night. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow."
If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tom's tales crescendoed, each one a layer of dread building over Sarah's shoulders. Dark inches felt heavy and suffocating. She knew that just ahead lay the moment where truth would unravel, where the spirit she sought to escape would collide with her reality. Their interaction twisted, a claustrophobic knot, blurring the lines between savior and specter. The storm raged on, and the windshield blurred as if the night itself was crying. She steadied her hands, but the weight of Tom's gaze became unbearable. The road extended infinitely, darkness ready to swallow them. Would she uncover the truth behind the hitchhiker's malevolence and what had followed them from the shadows? The forest loomed, and the night was far from over. The tires screeched against the wet pavement as Sarah pressed harder on the gas. Tom leaned back, his posture unnaturally relaxed, almost like he was enjoying the chaos unfolding around them. "You're running from something, or someone," he said, his voice low and dripping with a sinister undertone. Fear turned her stomach into knots. She felt it deep in her bones, the truth he'd hinted at just moments ago. The trees on either side of the road seemed to loom menacingly, branches clawing at the car like skeletal hands reaching out to pull her into the night. Thunder cracked above, and the breath caught in her throat as she glanced into the rearview mirror again. The hand was back, clearer now, a pale, gaunt finger gesturing toward the woods, as if inviting them to something far worse than any roadside horror story. "Go faster," Tom hissed. The car lurched forward, propelled by her desperate instinct to escape the shadows. But as Sarah sped ahead, the impending doom buzzed around them, thick as the rain. The road ahead began to narrow, bordered by dense shrubbery that seemed alive, twisting and whispering in the storm's fury. A sharp bump jolted through the car. "What was that?" she gasped, heart racing. "Just keep driving," Tom barked, his tone shifting, cracking like the thunder above. The urgency in his voice rattled her. Was she running from him, from Tom, or something much darker? The question curled around her mind like a snake. Her only anchor was Lily, the little girl waiting at home, unwittingly caught in the storm's embrace. The weight of her thoughts made her choke. She couldn't let fear control her. But did she have a choice? "Do you believe in ghosts, Sarah?" Tom asked, his breath as cold as the wind rattling the windows. Sarah's fingers clenched the steering wheel, a rebellion against the cold sweat clamoring to creep through her skin.
She couldn't answer. Belief felt unnecessary. The hunt was real, and whatever haunted those woods was now haunting them. Tom continued, "It's about a choice, an unforgivable choice, one that you too have already made." The words hung in the suffocating air between them like fog, heavy and ominous. Do you ever wonder if it can come back for what it lost? Could he possibly know? She lunged to silence his question, focusing desperately on the road where the darkness stretched ahead, the headlights flickering like dying candles. The rain picked up its pace, drumming madly against the car roof, drowning out the whispered recollections he kept invoking. Suddenly, the headlights caught her attention, a flicker of movement just past the edge of the forest. Shadows darted beneath the trees, grotesque figures melded with the darkness. She gasped, gripping the wheel tighter. "They want you to stop," Tom said, his voice soft yet sinister. "They want you to turn around, to face what you fear most." Her foot hesitated on the gas pedal. What if turning back was the only way out of this nightmare? She could almost see Lily's face in her mind, innocent and trusting, but she didn't want to confront the past, the mistakes that might bind her to this cursed road forever. Another flash of movement, something pale and ghostly flitting between the trees. Sarah's breath hitched. Was this the price for her freedom? Could she outrun the darkness? "Faster, Sarah," Tom urged, and the urgency returned to his voice. "You feel it, don't you? The fate that awaits." She glanced at him. His eyes shined with a flicker of anticipation that chilled her deeper than the night. The road narrowed still further. The headlights caught a glimpse of something. 3 figures or shadows up ahead. She could see their faces, pale and twisted with anguish, mouths silently screaming as if begging for release. Panic coursed through her veins, forcing her to slam on the brakes. The car skidded, tires screeching through the rain-slicked road, but she had to make it clear. What are they? Tom's feral smile widened. "The past comes to collect, Sarah. It always does." Suddenly, the rear windows fogged, offered no sight of the torment behind. A realization washed over her, a sickening twist in her gut. They weren't just memories, they were the very spirits he spoke of. In that frozen, fear-laden moment, she knew they weren't just hitchhikers, they were the living embodiment of her choices. Before she could react, the shapes from the woods slithered closer, and the temperature inside the car plummeted. Had she truly escaped Cedar Hollow's grasp, or was she heading straight into its heart? A loud bang on the roof sent her heart soaring into her throat. "Look!" Tom cried, excitement cracking through his veneer of calm. The outline of what loomed above them cast a shadow, gold and gathered like a cloud of despair. What had she let in? She had to decide. The road ahead twisted, dark and uncertain. Would she confront the ghosts of her past, or flee into the unknown? The characters of her story were about to be rewritten by forces beyond her understanding, and somewhere deep in the shadows, the whispers grew louder. The icy chill within the car pressed against Sarah's skin as she stared into the suffocating darkness outside. Every instinct screamed at her to drive away, to escape the haunting figures that surrounded them. But nothing was as simple as it seemed. She could feel the weight of Tom's gaze burning into the nape of her neck, even amidst the torrential storm. She could practically hear the echo of his words in her mind, intertwining with the whispers of the shadows. "Turn the car around," Tom said, his tone now dripping with an urgency that twisted in Sarah's stomach. "They need to see you." "Need to see me?" she wanted to yell. "Why? What do you know?" But fear had sealed her lips, binding her to the wheel, the tires still locked in place. The figures loomed closer, and Sarah was startled as one stepped into the faint glow of the headlights. A woman, her face twisted in torment, a stark contrast to the blurry images that had swirled past moments earlier. The woman's mouth moved, words lost to the storm. She pointed towards the woods, and in that motion, a sickening recognition twisted in Sarah's gut. "No," Sarah whispered,
revulsion creeping into her voice. The memories buried deep within her resurfaced, clawing at her like the branches that thrummed against the car's windows. The woman looked familiar. It was someone Sarah had long tried to forget, someone she couldn't bear to face again. "You can't outrun them," Tom said, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper, wrapping around her like fog. "You have to embrace it. You have to face yourself." The truth hit Sarah like a slap. Those figures weren't just lost souls. They were echoes of decisions and pain she had tried to bury. A shudder of realization coursed through her, igniting a flickering flame of anger deep within. Everything she had fought to escape was manifesting right here in this car, beneath the pounding rain. "Lily," she breathed, remembering the little girl waiting at home, innocent and untainted by her choices. "I can't let this come back for her." Tom leaned closer, his eyes glinting. "You already made that choice. Now's the time to show them what you're willing to do to fight for her." In that moment, the figures grew restless, swaying with the rhythmic pounding of rain and thunder. Frantic whispers filled the air, as if the shadows were debating her fate, urging her to yield to the ultimate darkness. Desperation clawed at her heart. Did she confront this past, or dive deeper into the abyss to save what was left of her future? With trembling hands, she slammed the car into reverse.
The tires spun and kicked up mud as she rolled backward, accelerating as she wrestled against the chaos surrounding her. The woman's face lingered in her mind, eyes pooling with tears that glistened like raindrops, grief twisted with a plea for resolution. Suddenly, a blinding flash split the night. Sarah's breath caught as a figure dashed across the road right in front of her car. It was a child, no older than Lily, hair cascading wildly in the storm. Fear erupted in her chest. She swerved sharply, heart racing. "What was that?" she screamed, the world spinning around her. "Don't look back," Tom shouted, a mix of urgency and amusement. "You're not meant to see what you're leaving behind." But it was too late. The memories flooded her mind. The choices, the shadows of her decisions, all rushed back like a relentless tide. They weren't merely behind her. They were a part of her. Before Sarah could process it all, a deafening bang resonated through the air, startling her once again. The car lurched, tires protesting against unseen forces. Unseen hands pressed against the rear window, fingers stretching out like ghastly tendrils, grasping for her as the headlights flickered, casting drowned light across the road. "Sarah!" Tom exclaimed, the glee in his voice morphing into something that struck fear deeper than mere desperation. The corners of his mouth twisted into a knowing grin, as if reveling in her brewing panic. She gripped the wheel tighter, pulse racing. What did he want? What were they after? As the rumble of thunder drew ever closer, she braced for the chaos that was about to unravel. The road tangled before her, a fork with two paths. One led deeper into the woods, the other back towards the town. Yet neither promised safety. They both carried the weight of her choices, the ghosts waiting to collect. What was she willing to sacrifice to protect her child? What darkness lay ahead as she faced down the choice she had been avoiding? Behind her, the whispers crescendoed. The figures echoed a mantra, a chant of approval for matters left unresolved. The night seemed to swell in anticipation, and Sarah knew she stood on the precipice of a decision that could change everything. Could she face what lurked in Cedar Hollow, or would she tumble deeper into those shadows, losing herself forever? The grasp of fate tightened around her, and the night held its breath, waited for her to choose. The engine sputtered and coughed as Sarah's grip tightened on the steering wheel. With the storm crashing all around, she was caught between instinct and memory, each path before her heavy with consequences. Raindrops lashed against the windshield like accusations, and she could barely make out the figures drawing closer, shapes eager to expose her shame. Heart racing, she barely caught Tom's desperate voice amid the chaos. "Trust me, Sarah. You need to confront her." His eyes burned with urgency. But which path? The darkness of the woods felt suffocating, whispering with promises of secrets better left buried. The town, though, reminded her of a past that had nearly swallowed her whole. Every choice crackled with potential disaster. Either way, it was her past that beckoned, a ghost tangled in the roots of who she had become. As uncertainty clawed at her thoughts, a haunting wail pierced through the storm. The cry resonated deep within her soul,
enching a shiver down her spine. It was undeniably a child's voice, familiar. "Lily," she gasped, trying to shake the feeling off like a bad dream. Just then, the child, the apparition she had seen dart across the road, materialized beside her, its wide, glassy eyes locked on hers. The resemblance was uncanny. It was as if Lily had stepped from the depths of her nightmares. In that instant, Sarah felt a surge of panic. If this was a trap, she had wandered straight into it. "Give in to despair," the shadows whispered. "Leave her behind, and the darkness will set you free." "No," Sarah choked, clenching her teeth as terror overwhelmed her. "Do it, Sarah." Tom leaned over, his voice hissing through clenched jaws. "She's showing you the way." The taunt in his tone made her bitterly uneasy. She wanted to shout back, to shake him, to get him to see her daughter wasn't a guide, she was a victim. With every tick of time, the energy inside the car pulsed, a sickening charge building to a height that felt impossibly wrong. As fear spiraled into fury, Sarah slammed her foot on the gas pedal. The tires skidded, and the car shot forward down the path toward the woods. The headlights sliced through the rain, illuminating a gnarled tree that seemed to reach for them, a skeletal finger beckoning her closer to the heart of darkness. "Sarah, stop!" Tom screamed, but his voice melted into a chorus of shadows surrounding them, drowning her in their relentless chant. The storm echoed reply, thunder rolling like laughter. Suddenly, the car jolted violently, as though an unseen force gripped it, slamming it sideways and forcing her to yelp in shock. The tree branches clawed at the metal like a living beast protesting against their intrusion. Panic surged anew. They were closing in. The figures blurred in her vision, faces shifting and merging, each one a fragment of her past failures, the choices she regretted, the people she had abandoned. A sharp slate of ice gripped her heart. "What do you want from me?" she screamed into the tempest, hoping some benediction could bring clarity. In answer, the echoes grew louder, merging into a single voice. "Face what you've lost. Only then will you be free." Out of the chaos, something glimmered at the edge of the woods, a pale light, flickering just beyond the reach of the storm, almost inviting. The whispers pressed in, mixing fear with an anxious allure that promised revelation. "Turn back, Sarah."
"You lose everything," Tom warned, but his eyes flashed with an eerie hunger, almost urging her to take the plunge. The light grew stronger, a beacon against her soul's darkness. Could she trust it? Or would following lead to the ultimate betrayal, the one that nobody survived? She took a breath, heart hammering, the weight of her decision looming in the storm's breath as the shadows beckoned. What awaits beyond that light? And in that moment, the depths awaited her answer, hungry and expectant. With a roar of thunder, the world around Sarah morphed into chaos. The rain lashed harder against the windshield, as if her past had risen from the depths to reclaim her. The headlights flickered. For a brief moment, the pale light at the edge of the woods illuminated a figure, small, ghostly. It was her daughter, Lily, or at least the shadow of who she once was. In that flicker, Sarah felt her heart seize, caught between hope and despair. "Sarah!" Tom's voice broke through her panic. "Stop! You don't know what you're doing." His eyes had shifted, a storm of confusion and something darker inside them. But there was no turning back now. The glow pulsed like a heartbeat, luring her closer. It hummed in her bones, whispering promises, answers that had eluded her since that day, a day buried in shadows and shame. She pressed the gas, launching the car toward the woods. The darkness loomed, a gaping mouth ready to swallow her whole. Rain splashed violently against the hood, each droplet echoing her racing pulse. "Lily!" she cried, desperation fueling her words. Just beyond that light, the truth waited, if she was brave enough to seize it. The storm howled, erasing the world behind her. Shadows danced along the edges of her vision, reaching, clawing. They wanted her to stay, to buckle under the weight of her failures. The memory of Lily's laughter, juvenile and innocent, washed through her with a tidal force, drowning her in longing. Suddenly, the car's headlights flickered out, plunging them into darkness. "Sarah!" Tom's voice trembled. "What did you do?" Panic gripped her heart. "I didn't—" Before she could finish, the car shuddered beneath her, responding to an unseen force. The fabric of the night rippled with a life of its own. She felt it in her bones. The world had shifted. The air was thick with a heavy dread, as if the woods themselves were alive, hungry for her secrets. "Get out!" Tom shouted, his panic erupting. "I can't stay here." As if in agreement, the trees began to lean in, bending at unnatural angles. She felt trapped, the suffocating pressure of the dark memories pinning her down in her seat, blocking her path to freedom. "Trust me." Tom's voice twisted with something she didn't recognize. It was different now, like a serpent slithering through her mind, sowing deeper doubt. But that voice wasn't Tom's. It felt twisted, bitter, tainted with desperation.
Her hand trembled on the gear shift, weighing her options amid the growing heaviness. At that moment, a chilling realization struck her. The light had dimmed, fading like a dying star. A scream erupted from her lips, raw and visceral. "No! Lily!" The air grew colder, a piercing chill creeping through the car. The figure of Lily stood before the fading light now, but she was different. The innocence had drained, replaced by hollow eyes that reflected pain and betrayal. "You left me, Mommy." The voice was a whisper, haunting and echoing. Around them the trees creaked, almost nodding in agreement, shadows closing in tighter. Fury bloomed within Sarah, fierce and choking. "No! I came for you!" But her voice cracked under the weight of her sorrow, twisting into fear. The darkness quivered, and the ground shifted beneath the tires. Reality began to warp, the edges of her vision blurring. In the depths of her heart, something erupted, a recognition of her lost time and hurt. "Face what you've lost," came the voice again, louder now, resonating deeper than before. "Face it!" Lightning flashed, illuminating Lily's gaunt figure, a shriek of despair building in the air. A blinding flash dropped her back into the moment, and Sarah realized with horror that she was losing herself again. Just then, the engine roared to life with a guttural growl. The car lurched, tearing through the darkness as if pulled by an unseen force, plunging deeper into the woods. What lay ahead screamed of dread, yet Sarah felt the inevitability of her choices creeping closer. "Tom!" she gasped, but the shadows would not stand for any delay. Her heart raced as she braced for what awaited them. The forest was alive with whispers, secrets waiting to erupt. "Please, what have I done?" she muttered, desperate for an answer. But as the woods consumed them, a chilling laughter reverberated through the rain-soaked night, and in that moment, she felt the first flicker of understanding. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning. What would she have to sacrifice to reclaim what was lost? Would confronting the past reveal the truth, or devour her whole? The car's tires skidded on the wet ground, sending sprays of mud flying as it careened past gnarled branches that seemed to claw at the steel frame. Sarah gripped the wheel, her knuckles white with fear, as memories flashed before her like a strobe light, a vision of Lily, sweet and innocent, morphing into a figure of pain and accusation. "Sarah, we need to get out of here!" Tom shouted, his voice almost drowned out by the tempest outside. It pierced through her fog of panic. "Where?" she gasped, eyes darting to the swirling darkness around them, heart hammering in rhythm with the pounding rain. The woods had turned into a labyrinth, each shadow a potential trap. The sinister silhouettes of the trees loomed, blocking any escape from the nightmarish reality closing in on them. Just pull over. We can think."
He was frantic now, the resolve in his voice giving way to a desperate edge. But beneath the sound of the rain, a different noise crept into her consciousness, a soft giggle swirling like tendrils of smoke. Sarah whipped her head towards the source, but saw only shifting shapes. The laughter echoed, high-pitched and malevolent, as if the very woods had come alive to mock her plight. "Lily!" she called out again, each syllable torn from her throat, weighted with grief. Please, come back to me." That laugh twisted and turned, not just in her ears, but deep in her bones. A shiver raked through her spine, pulling tighter with each passing second. Tom's eyes widened. He must have heard it too. "What was that?" "I don't know." Her reply was edged with a mixture of desperation and dread. The woods pressed closer as they moved deeper, swallowed by darkness. Then, through the sheets of rain, a light flickered ahead, seemingly out of nowhere. It blinked, hesitated, and then grew stronger. Heart racing, Sarah squinted into the thick darkness, uncertainty gnawing at her mind. Could it be a way out? Or was it a trap, another manipulation of her fractured psyche? "Stop!" Tom shouted, his voice rising with urgency. "Don't you dare go toward it!" A part of her wanted to abide by his warning, yet drawn by a magnetic pull, she could feel the hunger of the light, its vibrancy calling to lost hope. Silence threatened as she hesitated, but Tom's face contorted with fear, something primal shining in his eyes. "Do you trust me?" he asked suddenly, gripping her arm with a force born of terror. "Of course, but—" she glanced towards the light, shifting uncertainty clawing at her. "It's not real!" he exclaimed. "You know it's not!" Before she could argue, the car jolted violently again, catching her off guard. The engine sputtered, and for a moment, the world fell silent. The chilling laughter came again, louder this time, reverberating through the darkness. The trees seemed to shift, and for a breathless second, she thought she saw faces emerging from the bark, twisted, anguished faces, all staring at her, judging her. "Sarah!" Tom's voice shattered her trance. "What is happening? We need to—" The light flickered, erratic, frantic. Desperation surged within her. "I can't leave her!" she screamed, hands shaking as she drew closer to the inviting glow. But as she approached, the light began to darken, revealing something far more terrifying. A figure swirled in its center, a silhouette of a girl drenched in shadows, features indistinct, but eyes glowing with sorrowful rage. "Mommy!" The voice was a haunting melody, twisted with pain. "No!" Sarah slammed her foot down on the gas, the car lurching forward. The shadows clung desperately to them like a suffocating blanket. "Lily! There's no going back!" The walls of the forest crumpled in on them, each turn of the wheel a cacophony of horror ringing in her ears. And then the headlights dimmed again, plunging them into total darkness. Suddenly, the rustling sounds grew around them, leaves crunching underfoot, as if a multitude of unseen things surrounded the car. Heart pounding, she realized that it wasn't just a voice. There were multiple whispers, sinister words wrapped in glee at her despair. "Mom, what's happening?" Tom's voice trembled with disbelief, urgency giving way to pure fear. And then, from the shadows, they came, figures emerging one after another, drawing near, those lost to the forest, those who never found their way back. The night had come alive with lost souls. As their hollow eyes bore into her, a sickening truth settled upon her. This wasn't just about reclaiming Lily, it was about facing the very essence of all she had lost. "Sarah!" Tom shouted, breaking through the swirling terror. "You have to choose! Fight or surrender! We can't stay!" But the darkness pressed closer, and the shadowy figures began to chant, the echoes growing louder with each word. "Face your reckoning." Her heart raced, caught in the storm of dread. In that moment, she realized that the woods would judge her, and she stood at the edge of a choice far darker than she ever imagined. What would it take to escape this hell? Would she succumb to the past or fight her way through the tempest of regret? "Mom, we can't stay!" Tom's desperate voice was frantic beside her, but the shadows beckoned, whispering promises of pain and truth. The laughter continued to resonate, echoing through the woods as Sarah grasped the wheel tighter. And there, between her breaths, a cold realization dawned. This was only the beginning, and behind every shadow lay a truth too terrible to bear. But which truth would she uncover first? The shadows crept closer, their whispers rising in a cacophony of despair. Sarah's breath came in sharp, ragged gasps as panic enveloped her like the chill of the oncoming night. She had to make a choice, but what choice could she possibly make when every path brimming with the promise of salvation led only deeper into the darkness? "Lily!" she screamed, the name twisting into a wail that echoed through the obsidian woods, causing the shadows to shudder. Tom grabbed her arm, pulling her back from the edge of the abyss where reality twisted like smoke. "Focus, Sarah! You need to drive!" But how?
The engine sputtered again, coughing like some dying beast, and in that instant she almost felt its pain. The figures were closer now, gliding across the forest floor, their hollow eyes glistening with an unnatural light. They were waiting, watching, each moment laden with agonizing anticipation. "Please," Tom pleaded, shaking her. "We need to go, now." Her foot found the gas pedal, but it felt like stepping on a grave. She could see their mouths moving, forming words that reached into her, twisting at her heartstrings. "Mommy!" they sang, a macabre lullaby that tugged at the frayed edges of sanity.
Gritting her teeth, Sarah fought back the flood of sorrow threatening to engulf her. "I'm not ready to let you go, Lily!" she shouted, as if challenging the very fabric of fate. But the darkness laughed, a sound that sent goosebumps dancing along her skin. Then suddenly, she made a split-second choice. With a surge of determination, she slammed the gear into drive. The car jolted forward, tires spinning wildly, kicking mud and gravel into the air. It felt like the whole world shuddered beneath their weight, every tattered root and jagged stone screaming against their escape. The shadows flared up, elongating as if trying to grasp them, intertwining with the branches above. "No, you can't run from your past!" they cried, the unified voice a chilling reminder of her deeds, her failures. She could feel the air shift, heavy with the weight of her memories. The light flickered again at the edge of her vision, but this time there was an urgency in it. Could it be hope, or merely another lie spun by the forest? Ignoring Tom's frantic pleas, she aimed the car toward it, heart racing in tandem with the pounding rain. As the car barreled ahead, they broke into a clearing. The oppressive darkness receded slightly, revealing a dilapidated house standing crookedly amidst the tall grass, backlit by a silver moon. But it wasn't the shelter they sought. It felt like another trap, a siren call beckoning them to death's door. "Sarah?" Tom's voice quavered, laced with uncertainty. "We can't go in there." "Maybe we can find answers," she shot back, desperation clawing at her throat. She had to know what this all meant, what they were up against. As the engine died, silence settled around them, thick and suffocating. The whispers returned, now a disconcerting hum, and the figures coalesced at the tree line, waiting for their next move. Sarah reached for the door handle, but the chill creeping up her spine warned her. "What if it wants us to go inside?" Tom's eyes were wide, reflecting the stark fear that churned in him. "What if it's worse than here?" She hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down like lead. What truth awaited them inside? Would it reveal her deepest fears, or would it shatter the last fragments of her sanity? Suddenly, the house groaned, a living entity breathing against the storm. Against her better judgment, she stepped out of the car, her heart racing as she approached the door, the darkness behind her simmering with resentment. Tom followed reluctantly, casting fearful glances back at the encroaching shadows. With trembling hands, Sarah grasped the doorknob, turning it slowly as it creaked open, revealing an abyss within. An invitation, or a death sentence. "Let's just find out," she whispered, the resolve faltering but not completely extinguished. But they weren't alone.
As the door swung wide, a draft of cold air rushed past them, filled with whispers of long-gone souls, and a haunting voice coiled around her heart. "So glad you finally decided to join us." What awaited them in the depths of that house could either save them or consume them entirely. The cold air enveloped them like a shroud. Sarah stepped inside first, a mix of defiance and dread threading through her veins. The floorboards creaked beneath her weight, echoing memories of those who had walked this path long before. Shadows danced against the walls, stretched and warped by an unseen light. What awaited in the dimness sent a chill down her spine. "Is this really a good idea?" Tom whispered, hesitating at the threshold. His eyes darted around, searching for the darkness that seemed to throb with life. Just give me a moment," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She stepped deeper into the entryway, heart hammering in her chest, the scent of mildew and something far worse curling in her nostrils. A large mirror hung crookedly on the wall, its surface unnervingly smooth. As she caught her reflection, her heart skipped. Was it just her imagination, or had the shadows behind her formed into grotesque shapes? She blinked rapidly, trying to dispel the illusion, but they persisted. Each pulse of darkness seemed more tangible than before, and a whisper tickled at her ear. "Come closer." "Sarah?" Tom's voice shouted, his panic breaking through her stupor. He tore her gaze from the mirror to find him backing away, eyes wide as the corners of the room deepened into an abyss. "Get back! We need to go!" But she couldn't move. It was as if the air thickened, trapping her in place. Her thoughts twisted, consumed by the buried memories waiting just beyond the threshold of her mind. The whispers crescendoed, an endless symphony of longing and loss, of promises broken and futures denied. Then the shadows surged, the temperature plummeted, ice-cold breath enveloped her. Shapes emerged, clawing upright in sudden visibility, a trio of figures, draped in tattered clothes, their eye sockets hollow, skin pale and peeling. "Help us," they moaned, their voices eerie like wind through a graveyard, the syllables entwined in sorrow. "It's been so long." Panic surged through her, a visceral response to their despair. She tore her gaze from their sunken eyes to see Tom, now pressed against the door, chest heaving, terror etched across his face. "Sarah, we have to—" "No," she shouted, a spark of anger igniting her fear. "What if they need help? What if they know something?" The impulse to understand pushed her forward despite the alarm bells ringing in her head. "Please," pleaded one of the figures, its voice a haunting echo. "Do you remember?" Shivers raced down her spine as memories flooded back. Lily's laughter, the warmth of family once lost. She felt sick. "What happened to you?"
"Trapped, in between," the figures moaned in unison, pointing with skeletal fingers toward the mirror. "Find the door, or be lost, lost like us." An icy realization clawed at her, a connection she didn't want to make but couldn't deny. The darkness was alive in the house. It feasted on their fears, their regrets. It wrapped around their lives like the vines in the forest, intertwining their fates. "Sarah, let's go!" Tom's voice shattered the moment, trembling with warnings. Rage and fear wrestled inside her, but the shadows pressed forward, pulling on her resolve. "We have to take a chance," she cried, stepping closer to the mirror, the flickering surface distorting everything, her connection to the figures forming a fragile thread of hope. But what if it led to despair instead? What if they weren't trapped, but invited her deeper into this haunted legacy? With her heart pounding, she reached for the mirror, drawn in by the light and darkness entwined within. Suddenly, a shriek echoed behind her, and she whiplashed to see the doorway shudder as the house sighed. "Not the door! Not the door!" the figures screamed, extending their gaunt hands in warning. "What have I done?" Sarah whispered, nerve endings exploding with fear, as the world around her twisted, the house constricting like a serpent ready to strike. The situation spiraled further from her control, and an overwhelming surge of terror froze her in place. Would she truly save them, or was she stepping toward her downfall? "Sarah!" Tom's desperate cry pierced through her fog of dread. "Don't do this!" But the walls writhed like living flesh, trapping her in this nightmarish reverie. The deeper she ventured into the house's darkened heart, the clearer it became. Answers lay within, but at what cost? As she reached the mirror, the surface rippled, and a new vision seeped through, one that would shatter everything she thought she knew. In that moment, Sarah knew this was just the beginning. What awaited her behind the reflection could tether her to this room eternally, or unleash a horrifying truth that would change them forever. "Sarah," the whispers curled at her name ominously, echoing with a promise she might not survive to keep. Would she cross that threshold into madness, or would horror claim her soul unfulfilled? Her fingers grazed the reflective surface, cold and slick. The mirror shuddered as if alive, a hungry maw waiting to consume her. The air felt electric, every nerve in her body tingling with raw fear. "Sarah, don't!" Tom screamed, panic slicing through the oppressive atmosphere. He lunged forward, but the moment he moved, the shadows seemed to reach out, coiling around him like smoke seeping through the cracks of a crumbling dam. She twisted around, horror knitting her brows together at the sight. Tom's eyes were wide with terror, but something deeper flickered within them, a mixture of fear and a kind of dread she couldn't quite place. "It's not safe here."
"We have to leave now." The figures closed in, their hollow eyes boring into her, pleading. "Stay, find the door." Their voices tangled in a chilling chorus. "We need you." Sarah's heart pounded violently in her chest, every beat echoing the weight of their words. A part of her craved to help, to understand what had happened to them, yet another part screamed for her to run, to escape this nightmare that clung to her soul like a disease. "No," she cried, voice breaking. I have to know." "Sarah," Tom's voice cracked. The walls shuddered, vibrating with restless energy. "This isn't right. Trust me." With a final glance at him, she turned back to the mirror, feeling a pull that tugged at her very essence. A voice, clear now, cut through the cacophony. "You are tied to us, just as we are bound to this place." The reflection morphed, revealing something monstrous and beautiful all at once. Memories spun through the glass, images of laughter and warmth twisted into agony and desolation. And there, at the center, a figure, familiar yet obscured, floated just out of reach. "Lily?" Sarah gasped, the name slipping from her lips like a secret she didn't know she'd been keeping. Tears blurred her vision, each drop steeped in loneliness and hope. "What happened to you?" "Help us." The figures beckoned again, louder now, like a relentless tide washing over her resolve. A storm of emotions swirled within her. Guilt crashed over waves of anger and loss, pushing her closer still. She reached her hand toward the mirror, her reflection warping. A piece of herself stepped forward, beckoned by despair and the craving for connection. "Sarah," Tom's voice was fading, the desperation replaced by a resignation that chilled her. The door behind him warped, splintering as if the wood itself was trying to scream. "Please," she whispered, caught in the gravity of her choice, weighing the truth of past against the lurking horror of the present. Suddenly, the mirror darkened, shadows thickening like boiling smoke. A scream erupted from Tom, sharp and jagged. The figures lunged forward, the ground trembling beneath Sarah's feet. "Find the door or perish with us, forever!" Their hands stretched, the shadows reaching out, and the house creaked in response. "Sarah!" Tom shouted, renewed panic surging as he fought against the encroaching shadows. With a sudden surge of instinct, she tore her hand away from the mirror, stumbling backward. The figure shrieked in dismay, the shadows swelling like a monstrous wave, ready to crash down upon them. "Not the door, not the door!" The voices were now a tumultuous roar, screaming at her to escape, to flee into the unknown. Sarah dashed back toward Tom, who was nearly engulfed, struggling against the dark hands of the house. But it was too late. She felt the mirror calling again, a sing-song promise of understanding and connection.
Desire and fear tangled together, binding her in an impossible decision. Would she take the plunge into the dark, or would she save Tom, risking everything to escape? In a fleeting moment, she made her choice, forcing her body toward the door, towards the chunks of splintering wood that were all that stood between them and devastation. But as she reached for the handle, the shadows ripped and writhed, pulling her back, a desperate force that wouldn't let her go. Outside, the wind howled, a terrifying reminder of the world beyond. But she wasn't just running from the house. She was fleeing from fate itself. "Tom, hold on!" she cried, reaching for him, the shadows tightening their grip with each breath. Would they escape together? Or would the sinister presence wrap around them like chains in the night, forever binding them to the malevolent heart of the house? The air thickened around her as fear clawed at her voice, and the darkness quivered in anticipation. In that moment, she realized terror wasn't just lurking in the shadows, it was alive, and it was hungry. "Sarah!" The chorus of dimensions roared around them, each voice echoing 1,000 memories woven into despair. As the world spun beyond the threshold of sanity, she could only wonder, what price would they pay to escape? And as they teetered on the brink of darkness, one thought echoed louder than all the others. What if the only way out was to step into the mirror? The house felt alive, every creak and groan a warning that danger loomed just beyond their reach. The grip of the shadows tightened around Sarah, their whispers clawing at her mind. She felt tethered, suspended between the past she longed to revisit and the future that threatened to vanish. "Tom," she cried out, her voice shaking with fear as she reached for him, willing her senses to return. "Sarah, the door!" Tom yelled, his face a mask of desperation. The weight of what was happening pressed against the very fabric of her being. She pulled harder,
adrenaline surging through her compromised spirit. "I can't leave you," she shouted, her heart breaking as the shadows swirled, a malevolent wave crashing over them. The figures shifted closer, their ghostly faces contorted with pain and longing. "Find the doorway before it's too late," they whispered, a chorus of sorrow wrapping around her, battling against the storm of emotions roiling within. She could see desperation in Tom's eyes. He was right. Time was running out. The pounding rain intensified outside, the tempest raging, just as her inner turmoil swirled into an unbearable spiral. Clenching her fists, she felt uncertainty battling against determination. Could she truly just leave? What if all these souls needed was a saving grace, something she could offer? What if stepping into the mirror was the answer, the key to it all? "Sarah!" Tom cried out again, the urgency cutting through chaos. "Don't get lost in there. Fight this."
The pull of the mirror beckoned, a bright yet ominous light promising something more, a glimpse of the truth she'd long evaded. The memories washed over her, the laughter, the mistakes, and the shadows of her past. But could she really face them? Would diving into that reflection change anything, or would it simply drown her soul deeper in despair? Suddenly, the figures rushed forward, their faces twisting, yearning, despair mingling with something darker, not malevolent, but desperate. "Help us," they begged again. "You can break the cycle." "I don't want to hurt anyone," she shouted, her heart racing as the shadows inched closer, coiling around her ankles like serpents. "We are not here to harm, but to show you the way," a voice echoed, and for a fleeting second, she locked eyes with one of the figures, a connection igniting. It was a face she recognized, a reflection of her own pain manifested. "Face it! Find the door, or be lost!" The wind raged outside, whipping against the windows, illuminating the room in quick flashes. "I'm choosing you, Lily," she screamed, knowing she had to pull herself back to the present. "I won't lose you again." With newfound determination, she slammed her palm against the door handle, pulling it open with one swift motion. The shadows shrieked, their wails of despair echoing as if the house itself protested against her actions. "No, you can't!" "Tom, we can't waste time," she said, terror lacing her urgency. The shadows writhed around them, desperate to hold her back, but she gritted her teeth against their pull. "We have to go, now, together." "Let's get out of here," Tom said fiercely, and with their hearts pounding in unison, they pushed through the doorway, breaking free of the stifling atmosphere. The woods outside felt different, alive in a new, welcoming way. The shadows licked at their backs like a gentle breeze instead of a monstrous force, losing their strength as they stepped forward into the driving rain. A moment of clarity washed over Sarah as she felt the cold drops wash against her skin, revitalizing as if nourishing souls tethered to sorrow. But there was no time to waste. The night still loomed thick with unseen eyes, and the whispers now faded into the distance. The trio of figures lingering behind retreated into the shadows, their cries slowly softening until they were just pinpricks against the howling wind. "Did we escape?" Tom whispered, his breath visible in the icy air. I think so," she said, glancing back, but uncertainty still clung to her heart. The memory of lost spirits lingered, reminding her of a battle not yet won. In silence, they hurried down the winding path, each step easing the burden of fear. The storm dissipated, revealing the slight glimmer of dawn breaking on the horizon, a light shimmering through the pine trees, promising a new chapter waiting to unfold. With each retreating shadow, Sarah felt lighter, as if the weight of memories tied to anguish finally lifted, an understanding dawning that healing was within reach. Turning to Tom, she said, "You helped me fight back against the darkness. You saved us." Her voice, though shaky, carried a spark of hope. "I just did what needed to be done," he replied, his smile genuine yet fragile. "Let's go home," she said softly, envisioning Lily's innocent laughter echoing through their shared space. With the rising sun warming their backs, they stepped back on the road once more, ready to reclaim not just their lives, but the warmth of a future unbound by fear. And so they moved forward, arms linked, ready to confront the ghosts of the past together, present and future intertwined with the promise that they could finally find peace. As they disappeared into the daylight, deep inside they both knew that one truth prevailed. In recognizing and confronting what haunts them, they discovered untold strength,
a bond forged from pain transforming into resilience. If you're still here and feeling the pull of this story, take a moment and subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive adventures. Smash that like button now so it feeds the algorithm and brings more amazing content your way. And you need to flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this ending. You wouldn't want to keep that excitement bottled up, would you? Finally, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share the experience. The more, the merrier. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting these stories.